On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Welcome to Life Science Success Podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I wanted to just quickly mention the digital media company that I have, D3 Digital Media. We employ decades of life sciences experience and innovative technology to develop and define digital marketing strategies for healthcare companies so that they can build their digital voice, increase awareness, and drive leads, positioning themselves effectively on the competitive marketplace that we're in with healthcare, especially right now, whether it's investors or it's actually finding your next client. D3 Digital Media actually can help people work through that. There are things that we could do like work on your website, SEO, social media, and then also we do live events just like this with, webinars and things like that. So we help companies with things like that. So today on Life Science Success, we're going to be talking to Oksana Bovt. Oksana is the founder of Theoria Creative, and they help, and they're an agency that drives unique fundraising materials, enabling biotech, life sciences clients to clearly and succinctly articulate their unique message and value when raising funds, soliciting partnerships, pitching at roadshows, or presenting to prospective buyers. So with that, welcome to the show, Oksana.
Hi, Don. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to me, the work that you do. But before we, kind of dive into that, would you mind just taking a moment and telling listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. I'm originally from Ukraine. We'll probably touch on that a little bit later, but my journey was from science through marketing to what we do now. And I think the problem that we saw all the way is that people in science or technology, they always need help that helps them on the ground with communications, with sales. And oftentimes when you work with the creative agencies, they are striving for awards. They try to be too creative, right? So you kind of need somewhere in the middle, golden middle, right? And that's what we wanted to do. So I was trying to bring my understanding and background in science and make it available, combining with creativity, enough creativity that helps scientists in what they do.
Yeah, I think it is definitely an area. So I just got back from bio. We were talking about this a little bit before we started the show. And at bio, like you said, there's 20,000 people there. And as I met with, the different people that I was interviewing, we talked a lot about story and kind of how important it is in our field to have somebody help people that want to take very complex topics and break them down. I think it's really interesting. I also, if you wouldn't mind, my understanding looking at your bio, it was that you also studied biology before doing this. Most of your career has been centered around being this creative, person, but at the same time, you very much started on the science side.
I did start it on the science. It was molecular biology to begin with. And quite frankly, when I was in college, I couldn't pick which science to study. I did a little bit of genetics, microbiology, molecular biology, and I ran out of time because I had to graduate. But when I went on the field and I did try working in the lab, I realized that, oh my God, it's so slow. And I want something that is much faster. I want to see the results when I'm alive. And so I switched to marketing, and that was actually the best fit for me because I'm result driven and a great problem solver. And combined with creativity, it turned out to be a very needed product that we deliver to our clients.
Yeah. And then, also you mentioned as well that you're from Ukraine. I think it's really unfortunate to see all the things that are going on there. But as well, my understanding is that you have a team that's working there.
Yes, we've been working through the beginning of the war and throughout the entire time, and the beginning was shocking for everyone. And well, now the world knows that Ukrainians are very resilient and they're very dedicated, and I guess that shows through our work, because even I was amazed that when everything started and the entire world kind of froze in a shock, we continued to support our clients. And my team was working on the laptops from the underground subway stations, from the
Wow.
bomb shelters, and they would literally, we would be working, they would say, hey, we have the sirens, we need to go in the bomb shelter, I'll be back online in 10 minutes when I get there. And that's how we operated at the beginning of last year. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, you definitely can empathize with that story. And yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
amazed that people are carrying out what I would call any sort of daily life during a war. Again, being American and not having gone through this, myself, and even been, alive during a significant wartime for the United States, um, the, it's challenging for me to see how life goes on, right? In addition to the war that's happening.
Well, every morning the sun goes up, the day starts, and your life goes on, no matter what's happening around you, right? And unfortunately, we don't know when it's going to end. But I think the fact that people have the work, it helps them cope with everything, and plus it gives them security, right? So they know that if anything happens, they have enough means to move or do things that they need to do.
Yeah. And I do have a podcast coming up with somebody that's more on the manufacturing side that will be live from Kyiv, which will be really amazing for me as well. I know whenever he reached out, I had said, during the war, you're actually manufacturing still. And he said, yes. And yeah, we're, things are still moving forward. I was completely floored. And then so we have a great list of topics that we'll cover. And so I look forward to the podcast directly from Kyiv as well. So that'll be amazing.
My team saying that businesses are starting, so the life really tries to move on beyond all of the horrors that are happening there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So you founded Theoria Creative. Tell me a little bit about what is the name? What does the name Theoria mean? That was kind of the first thing that I had to Google whenever I saw it, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to explain the name.
There is a lot actually in the name. The name means contemplation and observation in Greek, and I think it was such a good fit for me and for our team eventually, because we're all introverts, and
Mm.
so we observe, we think, we contemplate before we do anything, and that's how the name came about, Theoria, and obviously because we wanted to be on the creative side and marketing, and then hence Theoria Creative.
Oh, very good. And then can you explain a little bit more about who clients are that you serve in life sciences? What does it look like whenever they come to you, and what sort of things do they do with your company?
So I think the sweet spot for us are clinical stage companies, late preclinical going into clinical, and it doesn't matter if they are private or public. We work with both, but because of our focus on fundraising marketing, what unites them is that they all constantly raise, right? Private funds or publicly, they need to communicate to investors, and as you know, investors have so many options. How do they choose what you have, right? Plus they have very short attention span because of the line of work they are in, so you need to be able to really grasp there with an interesting story so they can listen and understand your point of view, and then decide if you're a good fit for them or not. And so yeah,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
feel I feel like there's also just a broad range of investors as well, that some really understand the science, and others just, I mean, you really need them to you really need to break down the story for them so that they understand.
That's true, but also imagine, can one person know everything, every detail of a science? And that's what differentiates companies, their details, right? How deep they go into the science, how they tweak the molecule, what's done there. And it's very difficult to know everything. So don't assume, even if you're talking to very scientific investors, don't assume they know everything and they understand what you do. And I guess that's where we come in and really help bring the communication forward.
Yeah, I feel like as well, said with your background, being at that intersection is more of a natural fit now. Again, I kind of mentioned this a little bit ago that, you know, looking at all of the things that you've done in your career, it looks to me like you've done a lot of things in and around marketing and, you know, like on the more on the creative side, and less on the science side. But at the same time, having that background, how does that help you with, you know, kind of listening to science and scientists and working with them?
Well, actually, it's not true that not much on the science side. Science side stays sort of behind the scene, right? Because I understand why people perceive us as a very creative company, because materials we create, they look very creative. But before we get to this point, we really now need to go through the weeds of science,
Mm,
and that's what, in a way, differentiates us, because we do a really deep dive, and we have clients that tells us it's amazing that you were able to even figure it out after one call. But that's true, because we connect, we ask questions. Obviously we don't know everything, but we try to, we've done this over and over again, so you know which questions to ask, where to poke, and you kind of, it leads you to solution. And once you see the science, and again, that's going back to us being introverts, we see the science, right? And then I can see how I can make it beautiful and how I can explain this. And then that's where my team comes in, and we pretty much just work all together to create a material that communicates that in a nice visual way as well. So there is a lot of science going on behind the scene.
yeah, I feel like as well. I mean, in terms of the digital media marketing company that I have, we have to have a mix of people that know the technology for doing the things that we support, but then there's also a lot of people we have to have, you know, as well, that support kind of the messaging and things like that, because they, you know, sometimes the technical people don't necessarily understand, you know, what exactly they're putting in to put out in social media, or, you know, even on web pages. And so, you know, I've had to hire, you know, kind of a mix of people, I feel like, you know, in terms of supporting both of these activities as well. Do you have a similar sort of structure, or, you know, do your people have a mix of both capabilities?
You know what I've learned, and that's what I sometimes tell to our client: if you guys would know what to do, you wouldn't need us, right? And so I don't expect my clients to come to us and tell us what to do. It's quite the opposite. And I think that's another reason why people really like working with us, because most of the executive teams, they have scientific background. They can't possibly have business and marketing and sales and presentation and whatever, you name it, right? So when they come to us, we tell them what needs to be done, we tell
Mm,
them how this needs to be done, and then we go and do it. And that's another piece that makes it so easy for them, because they don't need to babysit us in a way. But sometimes you have a client that have a bigger team. They sometimes have CBOs, and CBOs usually are in this role, and they're very aggressively driving the company forward, so they know what they need. And so then in this situations, we just follow the lead. But it doesn't often happen in the companies, the stages that we work with. But
absolutely.
we combine, on our team. I have the scientific background, and I have a scientific writer as well, and so between the two of us, we try to sort out science and translate it into something that our team can understand and then execute. So, but we
Yeah.
always do everything in house.
Very good. Yeah, and so let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you do, because you've mentioned them to me as well, and I just want to make sure that the audience fully understands some of the things that your company provides.
Yes, so in a nutshell, I think we're known for two things. One is translating complex science because we can dive deep into it and figure out what is it that you have, what's valuable about it. That's one part of it. Understanding that science and what messages we can build. And another piece is that we create everything very visual and illustrative. So we can illustrate your science when you talk to investors or prospective partners. You can always visualize it for them. So those are two kind of components of what we're known for. But materials that we create, mostly we start with investor decks, because this is an acute need for everyone in the biotech industry. Raise money and make sure investors communicate and they understand what you offer. And so investor decks are a big part of what we do. But once we're done with investor decks, at this point, we know everything about the company. And at this point, we can create anything you need. If you go into ASCO, we already know what we need to do. If you have a potential partnership meeting with someone who is interested in one of your molecules in the pipeline, we already know what we need to do. And so this creates a lot easier communications and work process with us, because we require very little hand holding. But overall, we also do scientific illustrations for mechanisms of action. We create websites, and for the websites, we usually try to develop something that goes together with your deck, right? So it's continuous communication to investors. We also create scientific animations that show how your molecule works or show the disease that you're working with and such. And we do some of branding, obviously, because we need to work with nice colors, modern, and make sure that the company that we create looks very modern. So we help with that. And we also write content. We help with some of the LinkedIn posting. And so those are little kind of pieces of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, there's in going to bio this year. I mean, that's been the majority of the side conversations that I've had, is just, kind of a lot of people seeing a lot of the things that I know I post, and it's so important to communicate the things that you're doing. Otherwise, how do people know? I mean, in a broader sense. And I also try and tell people, oftentimes, especially even with like podcasts, the moment that the podcast goes live, yes, it's nice, and there will be people that watch us here, but that's only the first step. The next step is kind of making sure that you promote it and that you get the word out and things like that. And I would imagine it's the same thing for the things that you create. Once you have these assets, whether it's a presentation or an animation for the molecule, how are you going to use it to your best advantage? And a lot of that is getting the word out.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think you probably also see it in your work, is that many biotech companies don't think about marketing that much, right? And so they usually think that, well, we'll wait till we have good data and strong data will speak for itself. But if no one knows about you, to whom this data is going to be speaking? Just to your team, right? And yeah, so you need to think ahead and plan ahead and make sure people know about you when you have this good data. Then you make a big splash.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it starts well in advance, and that's, I think, the thing that people don't really give much credit to, is that you have to think, well in advance of whatever the event is or whatever the thing is that you're building up towards. How do you build that momentum behind it so that whenever you need it at that moment, it's there, instead of, you at the moment that you have the data, now all of a sudden you want to build an audience. It's a little too late at that point in
Yeah,
time.
yes, exactly.
Very good. So whenever somebody starts to work with you, I guess the key question I have in mind is, what how do they normally come to you, and what sort of things do you want them, to initially approach you, with? Do they have a very clear picture of what it is that they need, or do they just come and say, look, I need an investor deck and here's what I currently have?
Most of them don't know what they need.
Okay.
That's usually the case. Typically, we work by referral. We get most of our referrals from VC firms that we collaborate with and investment bankers. and they know our work for years, and they know the impact the work does. And so they try to, whenever they have a client or portfolio company that is getting ready for the next round, they want to make sure that they go through our process, because I think we've proved ourselves that we can maximize on the outcome. um, what they need to have is the time, a little bit of time, not much, because like I mentioned, we do a lot of things just by talking,
Mm,
and just have this time for us so we can talk to you, we'll figure out the rest. The only what I start noticing sometimes when we get clients that just found us through our social posts and stuff, so that doesn't come through referral, I notice that they usually not very organized in their business direction. And
mm,
this is something that we try to guide them, but this is not our area of expertise, right? And so if you're all over the place, you don't know what would be best to put in your pipeline or better focus, or you don't have a team yet and you're still looking, but you already think that you have a company and you need to go raise, you understand that you're going to burn some connections, right? Because you'll go, you meet with investors and they'll see what we see, that you're not ready. So be ready, and we'll figure out the story for you. That's the
yeah.
only what we're asking for.
So important as well. And then can you share with us a story of somebody who went from, let's say, a great scientific innovation where they didn't have that really good, kind of thought process behind how do they communicate it, to how Theoria Creative helped them, clarify that, and it resulted in a better outcome?
Yes, I won't name a company because they're public now, but a number of years ago, we had a referral from, I think it was investors who brought us this company. And the company has been trying to raise for a year, and they weren't able to raise at all. And investors that were current, they were a bit nervous, right? And so they asked us to take a look and see what we could do. And we start talking to executive team. We don't see a story. Then we start talking to investors. We only hear about the problems. And at some point I was even worried, can we help? And so what was left is to go deep into the science, and we went deep into the science and started talking to scientists in the team. And that's when we found the story. And the story was, I'll tell you the story a little bit, is that the company was in oncology space, and they had such a strong and very creative scientific team that was just ready to create anything for oncology. And that's where they end up being. They had such a broad oncology pipeline that was not focused, and
Mm,
investors didn't like it. They felt like this company is scattered all over the place. And for us, this was a golden idea, because the story we created was very simple. We said, hey, you can't treat cancer with one treatment. You can just do surgery or just chemotherapy and be done with it. It's always a comprehensive approach. And this is the company that does it all. And
wow.
they approach oncology and cancer holistically from every possible angle. And that turned the company upside down. They went oversubscribed, and they raised oversubscribed round for their crossover round, and then they went public. And in a way that made us a little bit known in the industry, because it kept us busy for several years, just referral after referral. And I'm very grateful for people who referred to us and believed in us ever since, and that helped us kind of get our place as well in the industry. So that was one of the stories.
It's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. What is some of the best career advice that you've ever received?
I didn't really receive any career advice per se. I'm an introvert. I look for answers myself. But what was very critical for me is that at some point I've learned about a career test. It's a skill test. It's a test that anyone can take, and it will tell you what you're good at, potentially, based on your just personality. And with my science background, after this test, that's what pointed out that I should be in marketing, that I should be in advertising. And that's how I went ahead and I added a degree in advertising eventually. And that's what put me on the path I am now. And I'm very grateful. So this skill test was a life-changing for me.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I've taken a fair amount of personality tests in my life. And I feel like at times some of the things that it recommends, could be very helpful in terms of understanding your overall personality and how you approach, problem solving and other things. So
you need to understand yourself first, right?
right.
Before you decide what you want to do with your life.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that I wish whenever we were younger that people would help to guide us towards is under that sort of really understanding first, and then like you had said about your schooling, you had this taking a lot of different specialties inside of biology, but then you wind up here, who knows, maybe somebody could have given you that personality test early on and found the similar thing.
Yes, exactly. And, when you're young, you first go, you feel like you have a passion. And I was introverted, and science and nature was something attracting to me because I felt more comfortable with them rather than with people. And so that's how I started. But then I figured out what I can do with this.
Very good. So there are 3 questions that I like to ask every guest. What inspires you?
My clients, obviously, because I feel like they do such a tremendous change to people's lives and to overall what's happening in the world. And we're just a little humble piece that helps them along.
Yeah. It's a great way to summarize it. Thank you for that. What concerns you?
Right now, global economy, I guess it's on everybody's mind, but mostly also safety of my team that is in Ukraine. And we really hope that this can resolve soon.
Yeah, very good. Last question. What excites you?
My dog. He's
what,
always happy.
what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Doberman.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, very
Yes.
nice.
I needed a very crazy active dog because the job I do is in front of computer, and I can live in front of computer. I love my work, but he comes in at 5 o'clock and says, "Okay, close the laptop and let's go hiking."
Very good. Yeah, I mean, I sort of, I think I summarized this in a blog post about 2 years ago. It was, I wish that in the morning that I started every morning with the energy that a dog has. Whenever you see them, bound out of bed and they, sort of bound through the door and they want to, energetically eat and then go on with their day. Sure, they may sleep or whatever during the day, but at the same time, it's like they have their moments where it's just like absolute, ramped up energy. And I greatly appreciate that as well.
Yes, that's why I have a dog.
Well, Oksana, thank you so much for coming on the Life Science Success Podcast. I greatly appreciate you being here and really appreciate the conversation about Theoria Creative and everything that you're doing there.
Thank you for having Don. It was very fun.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it, and last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.